I'm bored. Let's watch Jesterbell validate the bad behavior of men in Hollywood while simultaneously diminishing the experiences of women in Hollywood. Should be fun. All right, fam, so it has been a minute since we watched a video from Jesterbell, and that's partly because I was personally burned out on Jesterbell, but now I felt like it's a good time to go back, check out a video from her, because Scarlett Johansson came out, she did an interview, and she was talking about her experiences in the late 90s, early 2000s, being a woman in the entertainment industry. And as we all know, it was a very different time back then compared to what it is now. And so she's just giving her thoughts on how it was for her in that point in time. And so Jesterbell is working really hard here to make sure that she supports men in the industry. And knowing Jesterbell, this video is going to go off the rails, and it's going to be so much fun to debunk and talk shit. I can't wait. Let's get into it. All right, so the title of the video is Scarlett Johansson, No One Has Had a More Difficult Life. All right, well, at least she's not being bad faith, right? Right?
I'd like everyone out there to prepare themselves for this video because this is going to be a bit of a sadder video to do. It's a dark, dark world and a lot of bad things happen in it. And unfortunately, such awful things have also happened to actress Scarlett Johansson. In fact, I just can't imagine anyone having a worse life than Miss Scarlett Johansson.
I think it's really interesting. We know for a fact in the industry that women, especially in that era, were abused. Like, it's been documented already. More on that in a minute. But we know that it's happened. We know a lot of that stuff came out. And when Scarlett Johansson did her interview, I hope that Jesterbell reads it, because if she doesn't, I'm going to pull it up and read it. But in her interview, she's talking specifically about when she started in the industry in that era and how things were then compared to now. That was the point of her statements. Again, if she doesn't read them, I will. So to sort of make fun of a woman in the industry talking about experiencing some of those things when she was starting out, it's pretty disgusting, for real.
Which is what I want to explore in this video, because Scarlett Johansson is opening up about the difficulties in her past. And she's in a better place now, I think.
Right.
But still,
Right, so she's talking about experiences she's already had. She's not talking about an upcoming movie. She's not talking about a TV show. She's not talking about any of that stuff. She's talking specifically about what she dealt with in the past, her own actual experiences. And that's why videos like this are fucking disgusting.
I think it's worthwhile to talk about and learn from what happened to her in the past. According to Deadline, Scarlett Johansson recalls being pigeonholed because of her looks early in her career. A really harsh time.
You can save the dramatics. I feel like there's some sort of emotional or mental issue with this portion of the community of the world where they don't understand that some people out there don't want to be defined by the way they look. They're not out there trying to get jobs and trying to have a career based on how they look. This isn't a swimsuit model who's working for Sports Illustrated or someone who's trying to get a job where their body and their looks are what's important. This is an actress. And we know for a fact that women working in the industry who want to have legitimate careers do get judged based on the way they look. We just had the shit with Millie Alcock a week ago, where people crashed out because she talked about this. And here we are doing it again, except this time it's about something that happened like 25 years ago. And we're making fun of it now? Man, it's crazy.
I can't imagine that, you guys. I just can't imagine.
Can't. You absolutely cannot. That is true. That's a true statement. Jesterbell cannot imagine what it would be like to be pigeonholed for how attractive you are. That is a true statement. I'm not going to debunk that. I'm not going to argue with her. She's actually correct on this one. This is the first time she's been right in a long time.
Oh. Scarlett Johansson was a beautiful woman.
Yes.
And She only got roles as...
You're never going to be, like, you're showing right now why she's a successful actress and you are not. That's what you're showing. Also, this is a range of roles that she's had that show that she can do other things outside of looking pretty, which is the point of the statement she made. So what you're doing here is you are just proving that low IQ people judge people based on how they look, and that's it. You're not judging her on the quality of her acting. You're looking at pictures of her, and you're judging her based on the pictures. I don't know why this is such a difficult concept for this community to get. I don't understand what's so difficult about it. That some people want to be judged on more than what they look like.
Beautiful women, because she was a beautiful woman. Oh. Now,
are you done?
I'm trembling right now. I'm shaking, and I'm sure you all are now. But let's try to power through.
Right. There's nothing more disgusting than watching another woman put down someone's experience, another woman's experience, when it comes to being objectified and not given jobs because of how they look. Or on the flip side, given jobs because of how they look. And that's it. There's a little bit of, like, we're talking about layers here. Layers to this. There's just an extra layer of disgusting shit when it's another woman dogpiling on a woman. When it's about men objectifying them. More on that in a moment.
Let's try to power through the stories of her past and see what we can learn from them and extend our sympathies.
By the way, I don't think in any of the quotes that I read was she asking for anybody's sympathy. I don't even think she was promoting anything by making these statements. I don't think she was. So this is just hateful to be hateful.
After more than 30 years of acting on screen, Scarlett Johansson recently opened up about being pigeonholed early in her career.
Right.
While she sees roles improving for women in recent years, the two-time Oscar nominee detailed how Hollywood pulled apart women over their looks in the early aughts, which she said was socially acceptable at the time. It was such another time, too, she explained on CBS Sunday Morning. I think growing up in the industry and then being a woman, a 20-something-year-old woman in the early 2000s, in the spotlight in general, it was just a really harsh time.
Right.
Women were just pulled apart for how they looked in a way that was socially acceptable at the time. Johansson continued, "It was tough. There was a lot placed on how women looked. What was often for women my age, as far as acting roles or opportunities, was much slimmer than it is now. The Jurassic..."
Right, and I want to point out while she's reading this, if you do not have proof of otherwise, then you're just calling her a liar with no evidence. Because this is her personal experience. So unless you can disprove that she was not given roles because of how she looked, then these are her experiences. And I actually have a little bit of extra evidence to prove that she is telling the truth. And I think you all know what it is. Just think for a moment about the early 2000s, and I'm pretty sure you can figure out what I'm going to point to in terms of evidence of how women were treated in that era.
World Rebirth actors noted there are much more empowering roles now compared to the slim pickings for young women in the 90s and aughts. You would really get pigeonholed and offered the same roles, added Johansson. It would be like the other woman, or the side piece, or the bombshell. That was the archetype that was prevalent when I was that age.
Prevalent. Prevalent. The term is prevalent. Let's run that back. It's prevalent.
And it would be like the other woman, or the side piece, or the bombshell. That was the archetype that was prevalent when I was that age.
Prevalent, right. Right. Why the theatrics? Why the Where is the lie in anything she said? She was simply talking about her experiences. This is why I can't take these fuckers seriously. This is why. And I've said this multiple times. If you're crashing out over this, if this is a problem for you, then the performative nature of what you do is obviously on display. She's literally performing in this video right now to make this seem worse than it actually is. If you watch the interview, you'll see that Scarlett Johansson did none of this. There was no crying. There was no crashing out. There was none of that. She didn't behave like this at any point in the interview. So I don't know why Jesterbell is doing it, unless she's just trying to do it in bad faith. I will leave that up to you, dear viewers.
Oh, how I agonize, how my soul aches for Miss Scarlett Johansson. She was getting all the roles in the 2000s, as I well remember. But it was only as the bombshell, the super attractive woman. She was this beautiful.
So you're showing pictures of her in the roles that she actually said that she was getting cast for as evidence that there's something nefarious or misleading or wrong about what she's saying? This is what you're going to do? This is a really interesting tactic. Let's see how it works out for you.
Actress. And because of that, it meant that she was only being offered roles, the majority of roles that Hollywood offers for women, which is that of a beautiful woman.
Do you not see a problem with that? Is that not an issue for you? Let's unpack this for a moment. First and foremost, Jesterbell is one of the people in this circle who always complains about how bad writing is, how bad scripts are, how bad characters are in movies, stories, things like that. When you have someone like Scarlett that comes out and says, women are getting better roles now, it's more empowering, it's not just standing on the side and looking hot, that seems like it should be a good thing. If you want better movies, if you want more meatier roles, if you want more substantial and endearing and lasting roles in these movies, you would want women to have opportunities to actually do those things. That's number one. Number two, Jesterbell is also someone who made and I remember this because I reacted to it, a Fantastic Four video, one of the 5,000 that she did, where she talked about casting hotter people. She didn't find anyone on the cast attractive enough. Even Vanessa Kirby, who is also very conventionally attractive. She's a very conventionally attractive woman. She didn't think the cast was hot enough. So it doesn't really shock me that she sees no problem with the casting couch being filled up with women in swimsuits. I'm not too super shocked about this. I'm not too shocked about this, to be quite honest. Also, my evidence to prove that Scarlett is telling the truth about a systemic problem in the industry when it comes to entertainment is a little show y'all might remember called America's Next Top Model. Came out in 2003. If you go back and you look at the early seasons of America's Next Top Model, you will see just how problematic it would have been in that era to be a woman in the entertainment industry. Matter of fact, it is well documented. If you go on Netflix right now, there's I think it's a 2-part documentary about this. Might be 3. I think it's 2. And you watch it, you will see just how fucking awful it was to be a young woman in the entertainment industry in the early 2000s. So we have actual legitimate documented proof of how the entertainment industry treated women in the early 2000s, on top of plenty of other women who've said the same thing. But let's just pretend, because Jesterbell's doing this, let's just pretend that none of that is real and that we should feel sorry for Scarlett Johansson, even though she's not asking for sympathy. Feel sorry for Scarlett Johansson because she was pigeonholed into roles that she had to take because she looked a certain way.
Hollywood only makes roles for beautiful women in Hollywood, and as a beautiful woman herself, Scarlett Johansson.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, there is a bit of context there you are missing. You are doing this through the lens of 2026, where you guys complain about the uglification of women in media, which I completely disagree with. But you're doing it through that lens. She's talking about 25 to 30 years ago. Please be serious here.
Was only made to accept such roles. My soul hurts for her. Okay. Sarcasm aside, I do have some things to discuss about this.
Oh, so we spent 4 minutes with you in the theatrics for nothing. Please, for the love of every sky monster out there, every deity out there, please use that thing between your ears to have some sort of an honest opinion about this. Please do so.
Scarlett Johansson is an actress who has played a lot of roles that I really enjoyed. She's been a part of me growing up, my growing up and the different characters that she would play and whatnot. And I have to pick apart a bit of the things that she is saying here because as you might have seen...
Okay, so what I'm going to need you to do, these are the things I'm looking for in the rest of this video. And I'm not going to give her the whole video to get to it. She needs to get to it ASAP. I want proof. If she's saying that Scarlett is lying or misleading us or something along those lines, I need proof that Scarlett is lying. I will accept some sort of proof on that. If she's going to try and pretend that women didn't have it harder back in the early 2000s, then what the fuck was all of this feminist stuff that happened in the 2010s? Like, give me a break. Like, you guys act like the 2010s, the mid-2010s till now have been awful because women have dominated everything and blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. That can't be the case if these things weren't different back in the early 2000s. Because otherwise, you don't really have an argument. So you have to confirm that what she's saying is true in that regard, of how women were projected on media and things like that. So let's see what she goes with this.
For my little show in the beginning, this is a bit ridiculous, and I think it's making her look a lot worse than she thinks that it is. And this isn't just some sort of offhand comment that she made in a recent interview.
The only way she could look bad doing this is if dishonest, intellectually stunted individuals with no brain function don't understand that she's talking about her experience from 30 years ago, and she's not asking for anything in exchange for that. Where in those quotes did she ask for anything? She didn't. Nowhere in there. So only a very stupid person could take that as bad.
You know, she's kind of been on a campaign where this is the talking point, that it was just so difficult for her back in the day because she was only offered roles of the beautiful woman, the bombshell, and that's the only role that Hollywood happened to offer. And by the way, she just so happened to fit the bill. I have a lot to pick apart here of what she said and why it's just so ridiculous.
Go for it.
First of all, with what she said about women being picked apart for their looks in the early 2000s. Now, to be fair and to be nuanced about that, that is an element. And some people...
Oh, it's a very big element. It is a massive element. So let's see how you spin this, because it feels like there's going to be a but or a however or a although. Let's see.
People are really critical of modern day actresses for complaining about it at all. Look, there is an element here, is that acting and so forth, modeling, a lot of it does depend on your physical looks. And like that's part of it. Like if you want to go into the Olympics, then you have to be physically fit.
We're not trying to compare acting to the Olympics. This is a bad faith comparison. This is a false equivalency. That's absolutely 100% what it is. Unless there's a character that you're trying to like cast that looks specifically like, say, a comic book character or something like that, and the director wants to go with some sort of fidelity. Unless that's the case, she would be correct in saying that there were certain roles that women were pigeonholed into, like the side piece, the bombshell, those kinds of things. Those specific types of roles have specific type of castings. What she was arguing about was not that no one could fill those roles. Like, it's no way possible that someone could be the bombshell or they could be the side piece. She was arguing that those were the only roles available. You're talking about the Olympics. It has nothing to do with acting or modeling. Nothing at all. But I'm going to let you continue your false equivalency.
No excuses. There's no complaining about it. There is no complaining about, they're being too harsh or critical and you're trying your best. No, you have to be physically fit to be in the Olympics. And
by the way, also as a DJ, I guess my job is similar to working a drive-thru at a restaurant. Because we're both working, so it's got to be the same thing, right? It's just they're comparable because they're both things you do for a living. Dumb shit.
It's a similar thing when it comes to industry like acting and modeling.
It is not similar.
Physical looks and keeping up appearances and trying to look your best is a big part of it. And
And she's not saying that it isn't anymore. She's saying that when it happened 30 years ago, it was tougher than it is now. That's what she said in her interview. I don't know what you're trying to dispute here, because she did not say anything about they should cast the bombshell as someone that doesn't fit the description of a bombshell. That's not what she said. She said the only roles available back then primarily were these roles that demanded for you to look a certain way. I know it's very big brain for you, but her point is you're not auditioning for multiple roles where one of them might be the bombshell, the other might be the girl next door, the other one might be a girl who doesn't care about the way she looks. She's saying that those roles did not exist and now they do exist. That's what she was pointing out. You are creating a straw man argument that she never made.
It is absurd to try to make that go away, though I would argue that in some ways it is going away, though that's complicated. We'll get to that in a...
Which is what the point she was making. That was the point she was making. All the other stuff you said didn't matter. It was a false equivalency.
Minute. So there is a side to that it is, what you have to do, and men and women have to do that in the industry. They have...
Not necessarily. There is no history of, men would get cast in roles for all kinds of things, regardless of whether or not they were hot. Women specifically in that era were cast based on how hot they are. If you go back and you look at the movies from the 80s and the 90s in that era, you will see that not every man that was cast in a role is someone that was super hot. That's the point she was making. It's not an equal playing ground with the two genders here. It's not. Men and women are treated drastically different in the industry, especially 30 fucking years ago.
To look their best 9 times out of 10, unless you're playing a character actor.
Which was her fucking point. You literally ran into the door that she shut. You ran face first into it. She is saying in those quotes that those kinds of roles didn't exist for women when she first started out in the industry, and now they do. You literally walked into the fucking door that she shut in front of you, and you still don't get it.
But then there's the dark side of that, and we see that in The Substance, that movie, where, it shows what we all know, how the industry can chew you up and spit you out when you get too old or too ugly, or how people out of...
Too ugly? Damn, okay.
Desperation to try to be the most perfect looking person or stay young forever, how they will destroy themselves with drugs and surgery. That's what...
Which, by the way, you and the rest of your community push this narrative. You push this narrative. I can look through your channel and through so many channels like yours where you guys have thumbnails of attractive women made to look ugly, and then you spend 10, 15, 20 minutes talking about how unattractive they are, how small their boobs are, how they're too ugly to be in this role. You reinforce this stereotype that Hollywood had on women for so long. You are a part of the fucking problem. Holy shit. You guys are a part of the fucking problem.
But The Substance is all about. So there is something to be said with that on the one hand, Hollywood is all about, physical appearance for both male and female actors. And that is something that you are expected to keep up, and you have to in order to keep up your career. On the other hand, there can be a mindset of nothing is ever good enough. That no matter how much you try to stay fit, no matter what you do, nothing is ever good enough. And that people will tear themselves apart and destroy themselves over that with, drugs, steroids, Ozempic, surgery, all that kind of stuff.
You do realize that the Ozempic stuff that is happening is because of commentary about people's looks, right? You do realize that. Every time one of these articles comes out about how someone looks, how fat they are, every single paparazzi photo of an actor who's out grocery shopping with sweatpants on and she might not look her best, all of these things feed into the self-medication, the Ozempic era, the eating disorders that women have. All of it feeds into that. And I know you guys don't want to hear it, but you reinforce that behavior on your channels. 100%.
There is something to be said about the scrutiny, and if that scrutiny can go too far, where just nothing you do is ever good enough. However, I have a problem here with what Scarlett Johansson is saying. It is true that women were definitely judged and pulled apart for their looks, especially the early 2000s. There was a very, very big emphasis on, sex appeal back then and all that kind of.
So what was all the crying and shit at the beginning of this video? What was all that about? We're now about almost halfway through your video, and you've done nothing but confirm what she was talking about and purposely missed the point of some of the things she was saying. So you spent 4 minutes basically crying, boo-hooing, doing the worst acting job I've seen in a long time on YouTube, trying to diminish what she was saying. And here you are now walking it back and going, well, actually, what she was saying was kind of true. This is embarrassing.
Stuff. It was a very sexualized time in the 2000s. Scarlett Johansson definitely had people, make a lot of things about her looks. Like in the Avengers press tour, all of the press wanted to know what her diet routine was and all of that. However, here's what I have to say here. Scarlett Johansson, in her young early 20s, was in a ridiculously privileged position. She was one of the most attractive actresses in Hollywood.
Is this a joke? Is this a fucking joke? She's pointing out she doesn't want to get hired for being attractive. And you're now saying that she was privileged because she was attractive, and therefore you don't think that she should have the opportunity to complain about being objectified. You have to be fucking kidding me. This has to be a fucking joke. This has to be a joke.
As such, she got all of the roles. She was in The Prestige. She went on to play Black Widow. She got all of these roles in movies. She was like...
Based on how she looks and not her acting ability, which is what she is talking about. And all you're doing here is proving her point. And the privilege that she has is being acknowledged in the interview where she talked about this. She understands that she probably benefited from this in Hollywood. But benefiting from something that is a systemic issue isn't really something you or I can control. We can't control those things. So if you admit that you know it and you're vocal about that and you bring awareness to it, that's probably the biggest thing you can do when it comes to those kinds of issues.
Quintessential what Hollywood wanted, and she kept getting work, and to this day she is still getting work. I think she is listed as the highest grossing actress of all time, if not the highest grossing actor for all of the major franchises.
Which is why it's so important that she's the one saying this. She's going, hey, look, even though I've done really well in the industry, things were fucked up for a while, and they're getting better now. But they were fucked up for a while, especially when I first started out. Was she the highest paid woman in movies in the 2000s? Or did it happen much, much later in her career? After we'd gotten out of this, how big are your boobs and your ass, like, era? Which was it? Which came first? Was she super rich first? And that's why her experiences are invalid? Come on.
That she has become a part of. Let me pull it back really quickly and say something here. In terms of criticizing people's looks, you can technically be any make or build and be an actor. Anyone can be an actor. However, if you want to be a movie star, 10 times out of 10, with rare exceptions, you have to be super attractive.
Do I really need to go through and look at all of the male comedians in the industry who are not conventionally attractive? I'm not saying that anybody's ugly. I'm saying there's a level of attractiveness that is just conventionally attractive. I've talked about this many, many times in the industry. There are lots of actors from the late 90s and early 2000s who were men who are not super macho buff action stars. What you're doing here is you are showing how absolutely narrow and shallow your experience is when it comes to the movie industry. Should we talk about people like Adam Sandler, Should we talk about people like Jim Carrey? Can we go there? There's probably a bunch more. If I sat down and wrote a list out of people who were not conventionally attractive, who happened to be men and not women in that era of movie making. What you're doing here is you're showing your lack of intelligence when it comes to the film industry. Because you're going, hey, every guy has to be a hot bombshell. That's just the way it is to be a lead star. That's not true. It's just not true. And only somebody who has a very limited knowledge of movies in the industry would say something like that. Whereas if you look at women, the vast majority of successful women are typically the more conventional Hollywood style looking women in the industry, especially in that period in time. There were very few women that didn't fit that mold who were successful. That is the point of what Scarlett Johansson is saying. And you trying to like come after her over something that clearly you don't know enough about is really embarrassing.
Whether you're a male or a female. Like, there are definitely male actors and female actors who are very, very successful, who aren't based on their looks, I mean. But in terms...
So then it's not necessary. When you set up this necessary condition, then there cannot be an outlier. You cannot have an atypical outlier. If you're saying that Scarlett Johansson is wrong because, follow me here, because all leading stars have to be conventionally attractive, whether they're men or women, except they don't always have to be attractive. Therefore, your first argument doesn't hold up because you have removed the necessary element. You literally just reversed your own argument. You reversed your own proof.
In terms of the typical movie star, they want the hot person. They want the beautiful, exceptionally looking person. Sure, you can have a career if you're Patton Oswalt, but you're going to get a lot more success if you're a Brad Pitt. You know what I'm saying?
So again, you're proving that someone can have a successful career in the industry. Your standard is whether or not they're leading stars, which is not, again, this is a straw man argument that Scarlett Johansson did not make in her comments. In her comments, she was talking about roles, period. Roles, period. She did not say leading star, lead woman. She did not say that. You have once again, in your statements here, created a straw man argument that she did not make in her comments. Nowhere did she say that it had to be a leading role in Hollywood. She didn't say that. You did. This is your argument. You have created a foundation for your argument that is not what she was talking about.
Because movie stars are supposed to be the pinnacle about what everyone only dreams of being. That's why you have to have the most attractive person, because that sells. So
conventional attractiveness does generally, like I said, sex sells. It does. I'm not going to dispute that. I think that's a pretty well-known, it's a well-known thing. However, beauty is subjective. Attractiveness is subjective. So there are going to be people that find other types of people attractive outside of the status quo. That's the reality of it.
Scarlett Johansson was literally everything, like the quintessential Hollywood movie star. She had the perfect look for that, and that is what skyrocketed her to...
Which is the... You're doing the thing that she says was bad, which is, I look a certain way and therefore I'm going to be pigeonholed into this thing. That's what she doesn't want. She doesn't want women in Hollywood to be pigeonholed into certain things because, ding, 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 of how they look. That's what she said in the fucking article. And here you are reinforcing that in your video, pretending like it's some kind of gotcha for her when all you're doing is proving her point.
Success. Sure, she might have been scrutinized even there about people judging her looks, but
that
then
was
again,
the point.
That was her brand. She was the...
But she didn't want that to be her brand, and she had no choice because of how Hollywood was structured 30 years ago. She didn't want that to be her brand. Do you fucking understand anything that she said? She didn't want you to be pigeonholed into a pretty woman cast in certain roles. That's not what she wanted. That was the point of her statements. She didn't necessarily say there was anything wrong about those roles existing. She just said they were the only roles and women were pigeonholed into those roles. You still have not disputed any of that or made any sort of argument that makes it seem as if what she said was wrong or bad or has anything to do with a lie or you haven't done any of that. All you've done is reinforce what she said.
Most a beautiful actress of her generation in Hollywood, and she was getting all the roles.
That's
now,
the
my
point,
problem here
though.
with her talking about how difficult it was to be a woman in the early 2000s is she got it, I would say, maybe easier than a lot of other people. Because guess what?
So even if the system is against you, if you get it a little bit easier than someone else, you have no right to complain about the system? So if you have a house full of people who are all poor, but one person makes $1 more than everybody else, and they're still poor, they have no right to complain about being poor? Because they make $1 more than everybody else in the house? You're still $50 down, they're $49 down, but they can't complain about being poor, guys, because they had it a little bit better than the other people who are also poor. So when you have a woman complaining about how women were treated in the industry because she got hired a little bit more than other women in the industry, she shouldn't speak up. It should be the nobodies who are not in the public eye at all. They're the ones that should speak up, because then we would take it seriously. Then we wouldn't have these videos. We wouldn't have all these guys complaining about things that these women said if it was just people who actually never got hired in movies. Where are all the actresses from 1999 who never got hired? Why aren't they speaking up? Why aren't they doing massive interviews with CBS? Why aren't they talking to Rolling Stone? It's crazy. They never got hired. They should be the ones complaining, not the person who has a very large platform who can advocate for women who were mistreated in the industry. That would be silly. It would be silly for the person with the biggest megaphone to speak up for the people no one knows. That's insanity. That's never been done before. Fucking dumb fucking shit.
What? There were definitely actresses who got a ton of scrutiny in Hollywood in the early 2000s, but guess what? A lot of them probably were put under a lot of scrutiny because they didn't look as good as Scarlett Johansson.
Thus proving her fucking point. Congratulations. Hammer on the head of the fucking nail. What is this video? We got 6 more minutes of this shit? I don't think I'm gonna make it through here.
Scarlett Johansson was like the pinnacle. Imagine being an actress in Hollywood now, and maybe there were a lot of roles in Hollywood that you lost because Scarlett Johansson was the one
This
getting
can't
them
be
all.
serious,
and you couldn't
right?
figure out as competition, and now you hear her in this interview and various interviews that she's done bemoaning the fact that she got those roles. My point in
She didn't complain about getting the roles, you fucking idiot. She didn't complain about getting the roles. Before I end this video, let's just read what Scarlett Johansson actually said, because my head's gonna explode. She says, "It was tough. Okay. There was a lot placed on how women looked. Again, true. Okay. What was offered at that time for women my age as far as acting roles or opportunities was much slimmer than it is now." I don't see anywhere in that statement where she's complaining about not getting a job. She's stating a fact about how it was for women her age in the industry when she first started. She goes on to say here, there's much more empowering roles for young women in 2026 than it was in my 20s. She says there were slim pickings. You would get really pigeonholed and offered the same roles. It would be like the other woman or the side piece or the bombshell. That was the archetype that was prevalent when I was at that age. And then she goes on to say, this is what Jesterbell left out. It's something that I learned over time, but it's hard. Once you start working, you really feel like every job is going to be your last. And if you get opportunities to work, you have to keep taking them, even though they might not be as varied as the jobs that really give you pleasure. Every actor feels like that because it's so competitive. And I think once you do have the spotlight, you want to keep it on you. I mean, that's the instinct, I think, for every young actor or any other actor. And you didn't read the whole thing. Nowhere in there did she say anything about being the lead actor, the most successful person in Hollywood. She didn't talk about how we should feel bad for her because she got roles. She didn't talk about the fact that there were other people around her that she thinks are undeserving of those roles. She didn't talk about any of that stuff. None of that was in this interview. Your entire fucking video was false equivalency, stuff that was not comparable, and tons of straw man arguments. That's what you presented in this video. All you're doing is it looks like you're very upset that there's a woman out there who did get some sort of relevance in the industry because of how she looks, and you feel very upset that she's complaining about how attractive she is because deep down inside, you like it when men objectify you. That is what it's given to me. I don't know if it's real. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying speculation station is that it's giving you want men to objectify you in that way. And when other women say they don't want to be objectified that way, all you do is hand wave it and come up with every bad straw man excuse you can in your book to make it seem like that woman's views are diminished. All you had to do is say what she's saying is real, and it's much different for women now. And shout out to her for actually being honest and saying something. Because someone at the top of the chain, someone at the top of the mountain, speaking out about stuff that is happening to people at the bottom of the mountain is not a bad thing. It actually makes perfect sense. The thing is, you don't want her saying it at all.